Welcome guys to this AKT How to Pass, Come Back and Pass webinar by Dr. Mo from Inspire Medics. If you're just joining us, don't worry, you haven't missed much. We've started slightly late by about 60 seconds, but we are going to get officially started soon. So this webinar is specifically for those doctors who have failed the AKT exam. And what we'll be doing is going through obviously tips on how you can pass, how you can of course improve your mark, and how to come back from failing the AKT exam. So I can see there's a couple of people who have already joined. If you have joined us, welcome. It's Dr. Mo here from Inspire Medics and Dr. Sandhu as well. Just type into the chat box where you're joining us from, so in terms of which city in the UK, and also if you've recently sat the AKT exams, let us know by letting us know when you might be sitting your next AKT exam. That will be really helpful for us, obviously, when we start going through today's webinar. So today's webinar isn't too long, it's only half an hour, and it's specifically set up for those who have not passed because the results came out on Thursday afternoon. They may have come out earlier, but Thursday afternoon / evening was the official time for when the AKT results came out for the latest sitting. And so what we're going to be doing in this half an hour webinar is talking you through how you can come back and pass, how to study effectively, what resources to use to score the top marks if you've failed on your first or perhaps even your second attempt, or in some cases it may be your third attempt. If you've sat it multiple times. So what we'll do is a shout out very, very shortly for everybody. So I'm going to hand over to Dr. Sandhu whilst he does a shout out for the names and where you're joining us from, and then we'll officially get started. Yeah,
hi guys. So welcome to this webinar. So obviously it's different to the normal ones that we do. We decided to put this on because obviously we're aware that many of you do attend our revision webinars, and many of you are also obviously probably using our AKT question bank, and we know that obviously the results came out, so we just wanted to see what we can offer, what support we can give. So it'll be a whistle-stop tour. So obviously it's not a teaching webinar like the normal ones, but we want to just find out how you guys are getting on, how you're all doing. So just let us know whereabouts in the country you're from, and obviously what happened with your exam. So it's a confidential environment, so we won't discuss outside of this, of course. So we can see that Ania is from Newcastle, and I think is either doing the exam or did the exam in October. We've got Fatima Hussein in Manchester, failed the January AKT. Tosin from Reading, hoping to do the April AKT. So remember, guys, it's not specifically for people who are applying to do it. This is more of a support system for those who were not successful. But obviously, you guys are here, so we're obviously not going to get you to go or anything like that. Mohammed, I'm applying for GP training and want to start early from Halifax. Sarah from London. Fatima from Manchester, ST3 failed first attempt in the January 2021 AKT. So obviously sorry to hear from some of you guys who've not been successful. Ania will failed it in January, but will have a go in October. Okay, sounds like a plan. And then Tosin failed in January. Okay, Lami from Aberdeen failed in May and in October, and Sarah failed in August. And then Ebenezer from Manchester failed the January AKT, but will be retaking in October. So that's a shout out to Dr. Mo. So what we'll do, we're not streaming this live or anything like that. So it's not like the teaching webinars. You're not going to be, Dr. Mo, obviously I'm assuming you won't be doing that, but we won't be streaming this to the Facebook group. We won't be putting this up on the YouTube channel. For obvious reasons, it's confidential information. We don't want people to know about your result and so forth. It's just a safe environment, if you like, with myself and Dr. Mo. So, Dr. Mo, I'm going to hand over back to you, and we will get this webinar started.
Absolutely. So if you just joined us, everybody, welcome. This is the Inspire Medics failing the AKT exam and how to come back and pass. So obviously the results came out a few days ago. Some of you would be very pleased with the results, and others of you are not going to be so happy with the results because you may have borderline failed or perhaps not got enough marks to pass. So let's go through the outline of this webinar, because we want to go through why we're doing this webinar and how Inspire Medics can help, but also how you can get the key resources that you need to pass the next time. So firstly, of course, we want everybody to pass, and we've got a free AKT question bank, and the reason it took us 3 years to develop that, and the main reason for that was really to help trainees like yourself get through the assessment to become fully qualified GPs and get on with the rest of your careers effectively. We want to also show you in this webinar how others pass with top marks. So we've worked with lots of top scoring candidates who get near enough the highest marks in the country because we have a lot of doctors. We have about 2,000 AKT doctors use our PLAB, sorry, not our PLAB, our AKT question bank every year. And a lot of those doctors then get back in touch and say, I've passed with such and such a mark. So we get a very good idea of who's doing what to do really well, and those people who struggle, because those people do get in touch and let us know what they're doing. And we get a very good overview of the entire spectrum of candidates. And of course, we want to let you guys know that we are here to help. We are here for support, whether it's email support, dropping us a message on WhatsApp, free question banks, mocks, advice, and of course these webinars. So this is a relatively informal webinar. It won't be so much teaching, but it's to give you lots of different pointers and directions and strategies going forwards if you are looking to sit the AKT at some point for the first time, or to sit it again. For those of you who haven't passed the AKT on the most recent sitting, of course, you're going to be going through a lot of emotions, whether it's anger, feeling upset, feeling sad, guilty, disbelief. And it's important that it's important to understand that those emotions are natural. Whatever emotions you may be having, those emotions are natural, and you may be having lots of different thoughts going through your mind at this point in time. For example, a lot of you may be thinking, well, actually, what my friends and colleagues and my educational supervisor be thinking if I failed? Am I a failure? Will I ever pass? Am I a good enough person? Is this bad karma? Some people start thinking in karma terms. So have I done something wrong in the past, which has now caused me to fail? Were you this unlucky? Maybe you just failed by 1 mark. Perhaps you were going through a difficult time. Maybe you were off sick. You had some COVID related issues in your family and you had to take time away from training or studying effectively. Or it could be as simple as you weren't, or you felt like you weren't supported enough during your AKT preparation. And of course, a lot of you are going to be feeling very, very sad. If that's the case, it's only been a few days at the very most. Not to mention the financial loss here. So you've paid for the AKT exam, you've paid for perhaps some question banks that you've applied for and practiced. And for some of you, especially for those who are feeling really down in the doldrums, you may feel as if your world has come to an end, which may be a very short-term view for now, obviously, because you can reset the exam. So lots of different feelings that you're going to go through, and it's important to appreciate that those feelings can be very, very natural, and those feelings will pass. They're not going to be staying with you forever. So that's the first thing to bear in mind. Now, the second thing is there's lots of reasons why very, very good candidates like yourselves may have failed. And there can be very good reasons for that. So it's not entirely, it's not entirely the reasons that we've listed here, which might be going through your mind, of course, but it's important to know that the common reasons that a lot of GP registrars get in touch with us with regards to why they failed, and once we talk to them, we try and find out what's happened, is that it's going to be mainly one of these 5 or 6 reasons. So you probably very quickly would recognize which one of these 5 or 6 reasons you may fall into. And often the most common one is lack of preparation. So you simply haven't had enough time to prepare properly because of perhaps hospital rotations, working, family commitments, and so on and so forth. And that's something which, on reflection, which we'll come on to shortly, can be easily fixed. The next thing is poor preparation. We see this a lot. Actually, trainees are not using the correct resources. They've studied in a haphazard way. They've studied material which wasn't necessarily going to come up on the day of the exam, and they've completely misjudged it in terms of their study preparation, and that can then obviously result in them not passing the exam. Other common reasons we hear a lot in Inspire Medics when trainees get in touch is there's just a lot of other commitments that have occurred at the same time. So whether it's COVID related, so maybe a family member's become unwell, maybe it's financial related, you have to do extra locum shifts to perhaps pay off some bills. Whatever the reasons may be, the general fix for that is you need more time to study. It doesn't mean that you're a bad doctor or you're not good enough to pass. It just means that you need more focused study time in order to prepare for the exam. Then we have a small batch of candidates who actually have poor motivation, and that can tie into stress, that can tie into their mental health. Maybe they're feeling burnt out. And for those of you who are going through that experience, it's really, really important to seek external help. That could be your educational supervisor, that could be your GP, your registered GP, that could be family and friends, that could be colleagues who understand what's going on with your personal life. And it's very, very important to reach out and try and get that fixed. Others of you will have perhaps failed the exam because you're weak in particular areas. So for example, you got your results back and you've realized you're not very good in statistics. And that is easily or relatively easily correctable. And of course, if you follow the plan that we're going to give you in terms of the tips and the pointers, you should then be able to go on passing the exam, as long as you know what is the correct study material. And finally, there'll be a small cohort of you which who have underestimated the exam. Well, it's the AKT exam. It's like any other exam, the MSRA or med school finals. And if I study like I've always studied, I should pass. And because you've underestimated the complexity of the exam and how much they really are testing you as potential GPs becoming members of the Royal College of General Practitioners, you've simply not gone into the exam prepared enough, and that's resulted in a fail. So lots of different reasons why you may fail, but we have listed the most common reasons here. So let's see how we're doing for time. So we're doing reasonably well for time. So it's important to understand that even though you may have failed the AKT exam, the entire journey of becoming a GP is a marathon. Don't think of it as a sprint. And it's a short temporary setback in what's going to be a longer journey overall. I mean, your journey will effectively be AKT, then the RCA exam, then you become a fully qualified GP, and then you have to revalidate every so often. And of course, you have to submit your e-portfolios online to make sure you're up to date with your clinical knowledge and so on and so forth. So think about the entire process as a marathon and not necessarily as this small sprint, which may have resulted in a temporary setback. And so what we're going to do is take you from where you are here at the moment, where you may have not passed the AKT exam, to here, where you're obviously going to pass the AKT exam, and then you're going to move on to the RCA assessments, or hopefully the CSA assessments, once the lockdown ends at some point in the next 12 months. So step number one, for those of you who have failed, it's important to get some space. Very, very important to get some space. And the reason for that is you need to allow your emotions to settle, whether you're angry, upset, guilty, sad, feeling very low. You need some time for that to settle so you can get some clarity of thought. Clarity of thought will allow you to plan, which is step two. We'll come on to that very shortly. But it also allows you to understand the reasons for why you failed. Once you're able to reflect properly, you'll be able to say, okay, this is the reason I failed. This is what I did wrong. This is what I need to change. And that's super, super critical, because what you don't want to do is have a knee-jerk reaction, do what you were doing before, except harder and spending more time on it, and not really having the correct tools in place, and then failing the exam again. So that space that you need may take anywhere, and it depends on different trainees, anywhere from a couple of days, sometimes up to about 2 weeks, roughly as a guideline. And that should allow you to bounce back. And then what you want to be doing in this space, in this time where you're reflecting, you're looking back at your grades or your marks and trying to work out what's happened, is you want to think about A, what's gone wrong, B, how are you going to improve, and C, how are you going to move forwards. And that entire process is not only important for now, but it's also going to be important for later on in your careers, when you reflect in your e-portfolios, and of course when you come to revalidation later on in your career as a GP. So that's step number one. Step number two, you do need to decide when you're going to book into the next AKT sitting. Now, for some of you, that may be in a few months' time. For others, it's going to be next year or 12 months from now. A few of you have already mentioned you're going to sit it in 12 months' time. But it's very important to understand, to properly prepare for the AKT exam, you need at least 3 months, I'd say 3 to 6 months of solid preparation. And that would allow you, for most trainees, to comfortably pass. So if you are looking to book ahead in the next few months, please do book early, because of course the seats and the slots can be quite quickly taken, and not everybody is always guaranteed a place if they've booked in. And then you want to take into consideration your most recent mark. So what we mean by that is, if you've this borderline failed your AKT by 1 or 2 marks, you are probably only going to need 1 or 2 months of further preparation, and you should be able to pass. But if you've failed the AKT by, let's say, 10, 15, 20, 30, 40 marks or above, then you need a lot longer. So you probably are going to need 6 months to prepare, as opposed to 3 months. And that's very, very important to know. So step number 2, which also forms a part of action, is having a study plan in place. Now, it's important that you plan this properly, and you refer back to the RCGP AKT curriculum, which I'm going to share with you on the screen very, very shortly. So let me just do a new screen share. Let me just click on this link. Let's see if we can bounce into, oh yes, we can. Okay, so I'm just gonna do a screen share with you guys. So this is the RCGP curriculum. You should all be able to see my browser now. There is a page before this which looks a bit like this. This is like the main in-depth RCGP curriculum, which takes you to the core curriculum and then the different topics. But it goes into a lot of detail, so that's good when you're first starting off. But what I recommend for those of you who are perhaps resitting the exam is you want to go into the super condensed guides. Now, this is so useful. And the reason this is so useful is because this gives you a snapshot of what the Royal College is looking for. So if I go into gastroenterology super condensed guide, and it hasn't opened, so let's open up another. It's going to go into another browser so you can see this a bit more better. Okay, so if I go into the super condensed guides for the curriculum for the RCGP and I click on gastroenterology, you should be able to now see on my browser how the RCGP have broken down the different topic areas, and more specifically, how you may be tested. So I'm going to zoom into this for you. How you may be tested in the MRCGP AKT exam. Now, this is a big, like, ding, ding, ding. This is what we're going to test in the actual exam. Investigation of rectal bleeding in different patient scenarios, drug therapies for inflammatory bowel disease, and interpretation of liver function tests. That's one useful place to go to with regards to preparing for your AKT. And of course, they've got different topics here which you can revise. So that's the first thing. And then the second thing is, after every AKT sitting, what the Royal College does is that they issue feedback on the exam. And it's really important that you go through that feedback, because what they'll do is they'll highlight different topics where candidates didn't do particularly well on. And then, of course, you can revise those topics based on the Royal College guideline recommendations, because those topics are likely to come up again in future. So, so the first thing to do is obviously go to the Royal College website and look at the AKT curriculum, the overall curriculum, and the super condensed curriculums, as well as the feedback for each and every exam over the last, for example, 2 to 3 years. So each exam that's been done for the AKT will have feedback associated with it, highlighting certain topics which were tested and which were not done particularly well. This gives you a very good idea of what you need to revise and study for. And of course, remember, the AKT exam is broken down into 3 components: the clinical, the statistics, and the health administration. Secondly, what you want to be doing is practicing actual questions. Now, there's lots of different question banks out there. And of course, we're going to recommend our iMedics AKT question bank, which, by the way, is completely free and has over 3,000 questions. And a good tip is to try and do these questions in your free periods, whether it's weekends, evenings, protected study times. One candidate who we're aware of who scored really well would do 10 questions whilst he was eating breakfast on his phone, 10 questions whilst he was having lunch on his phone, and 10 questions whilst he was having dinner in the evening, again whilst he was on his phone. And that would allow him to do comfortably 30 questions in a day, and that allowed him to build up his knowledge base over time. The other thing that you want to do is spaced repetition. So what you want to do is you want to obviously make notes as you go along. And I'll come on to this in a short while in terms of how you can effectively make notes and revise. But spaced repetition is about learning something, but then coming back to it later and again and again and again. And as time progresses, the period between each return to the learning point becomes bigger and bigger and bigger. So, for example, initially you may visit a subject, and then you've learned about it today. Let's say acne management, and then you come back to it 24 hours later. And then you come back to it 48 hours later, and then 72 hours later, and then 5 days later, and then a week later. That's called spaced repetition. It allows you to initially learn, revisit the information, but then your knowledge, your memory centers in your brain begin to obviously retain that information for longer and longer, which means you can space out the revision between the different topics. And of course, you want to do that for different topics and make them more and more spaced out. But eventually, before the exam, you want to be able to summarize or visit the summary notes for that topic so you can quickly go through it. So that spaced repetition is a very powerful tool and was highly recommended in preparing for the AKT exam. In terms of the actual resources that you're going to use, there are only 3 or 4 resources that you actually need. And of course, you can do supplementary reading around it, the BMJ, best practice, for example, patient.co.uk. But these are the core resources, and therefore you shouldn't be going too far away from these resources, which is the NICE CKS guidelines, the BNF, which is of course online. You want to read about the QOF guidelines, especially the latest 2020 and 2021 guidelines, and those can be downloaded as a PDF document. You want to be speaking to your educational supervisor about health admin related topics, so sick notes, for example. When would a patient be referred to, I don't know, let's say, for example, occupational health, stress during in the workplace. These are the types of topics which can come up. And then, of course, understanding the GMS versus the PMS contracts, which again, you can learn about online. You can Google that GMS versus BMS. The BMA has got a very good summary on it, but it's something you can discuss with your educational supervisor because they'll give you a lot of insight into those topics, which will be tested in the AKT exam. And then for those of you who have not done A-level maths or done statistics during GCSEs, A-levels, or earlier on in your career, it's worth getting some statistical books so that you can learn about the topics which are likely to come up in the AKT: mean, mode, median, standard distribution curves, and so on and so forth. And there are 2 textbooks that we recommend. The one on the left is Medical Statistics Made Easy. It's a very nice read. It's a very relatively easy read, and it's something that we'd highly recommend that you use in your preparation for your AKT. Now, there is another book called the RCGP AKT Research Epidemiology and Statistics book, which is a masterpass, but it's a lot more heavier reading. So we don't recommend this unless you're super, super keen. But this book on the left here, my left, would be a very, very good starting point. And therefore, for those of you who are struggling with statistics, it's worth going through this book from cover to cover. But of course, answering the questions within the question banks that you're currently subscribed to, because a lot of those will have questions very, very similar to the real exam, including our free AKT bank. Now, I am going to bounce out for a second because I am going to show you some resources which you guys will find useful. So if you just bear with me for a moment. Okay, so with regards to the NICE CKS, for those of you who don't use it, you should start using it a lot more regularly. I use it all the time in my clinical day-to-day practice to double check guidelines when I'm unsure. And of course, the NICE guidelines get updated every month. About 12 topics get updated every month. And so quite quickly, your knowledge can become outdated if you're not familiar with it. And it covers over 350 topics. So for example, if I want to learn about migraines, you can go into the migraine part of the NICE CKS website. And then from there, you can choose subtopics. For example, a subtopic could be management or prescribing information. On the top, you also have the BNF. So if you were to click on the BNF, that would allow you to, of course, learn about different topic areas. And what you can do is go into treatment summaries. So treatment summaries is very good if you want to get an overview of a topic. So let's say iron deficiency anemia. And again, you can read about drug therapy for that, and very important information which will be relevant to the AKT exam. And then the other bit I touched on was the QOF side of things. So in terms of QOF, what you could do, I think I've probably got it saved here. Let's see if I've got it saved. Okay, no, you can Google. So you can Google the QOF guideline 2021 QOF, and it's worth reading around the GMS contract for the 2021 year, which may have information on it that will be tested in the exam. So it's worth not only for your own knowledge, for day-to-day practice in future life. You can read about the QOF. If you're not too keen on reading this information, the British Medical, the BMA, also has a summarized version of the QOF contract. And again, it's worth downloading their PDF document, which I think they have a summary of at the bottom here somewhere. I think it's at the top. Oh, here we go. So yeah, key differences. They also touch on QOF, but they also touch on PMS versus GMS. And the BMA is a very good place to go to read around these topics. There was a PDF document I saw somewhere to do with QOF, but at the moment I can't seem to find it. But those two resources are super, super key. And then if I just bounce back into the presentation that we were doing. So in terms of key preparation, the key thing to remember is that you do want to do MCQs on a regular basis, obviously to practice the thing which is actually going to occur in the exam. You want to actively read. So I've written here that active reading is a key point in effective preparation. What that means is when you read a topic, it's worth closing your laptop or looking away from your phone and then explaining that out loud to yourself. So for example, I may say the management of migraines can be broken down into three key areas: conservative and medical. As an example, medical management can be broken down into two further key areas, which is long-term management and acute management. And then of course I can go to triptans versus beta blockers and so on and so forth. And so you want to explain things to yourself out loud in order for you to have actively prepared for an exam. And that's where active reading comes into play. Rather than this reading and underlining and highlighting, you're actually rewriting the information in your own style or explaining it back to yourself in your own way so that you've truly understood the information. And of course, that's going to put you in an amazing place for the RCA exam as well. So what you don't want to do, as I said, is endless reading, highlighting, underlining, and also, of course, procrastinating is a huge thing, which can result in a lot of time being wasted or being used inefficiently. So what we do have is, and Dr. Sandhu will probably post in the link for this shortly, and Mohammed will definitely share all the links in a short while, is you can book into our AKT Big Mock. So this is important when you want to calibrate yourself. So you've done the revision, you've done the preparation, you think you know all the knowledge, and you feel like you're close to sitting the exam, but you just want to test yourself and see how well prepared you actually are. And what Dr. Sandhu will do is include the AKT link for you shortly, which would allow you to basically book into our big AKT mock. And in this AKT mock, we do a 3-hour, 10 minutes live AKT exam. We take our 1-hour lunch break, and then we do 6 hours of learning where we go through each question with the latest NICE guidelines. And lots of trainees find this super, super useful. And the majority of trainees who sit the AKT mock then go on to pass the exam, which is, of course, amazing news. And again, that can be accessed on our website. It should be, I think I may have it. I'll bring it up here for you guys. So for those of you who want to book in for the next AKT Big Mock, which I think is now going to be in April, 18th of April is the next date for our AKT mock. We can do a discount for you guys who will come into this webinar today. So the discount code is 102021, 102021, and what you'll get is 10% off. So if you just click on the date 18th of April, if you click add to cart, it's the imedics.co.uk AKT Big Mock. You can go to the mega menu at the top, GP exams, and then click on the third column along, AKT mock. It'll take you to this place, and if you use the discount code, this is only for you guys, which is 102021, you'll get 10% off, which is, I mean, it's an already amazing price. It's already discounted, but you'll get an extra 10% off on top if you're looking to apply or book in for the next AKT sitting. So this would be highly recommended, and lots of candidates have found this really, really useful who've attended in the past. So let's see where we got to. Okay, so that's the AKT Big Mock. The other thing to bear in mind is you do need to manage your time effectively. So this comes up time and time again, which is why we've highlighted it here for you guys. A lot of trainees who come to us and say they've failed, what we learn from them over time is they haven't managed their time effectively. They're going to work, they're doing their jobs in hospital, they're coming back, they're very tired, they make dinner, and then effectively they've got 10, 20, 30 minutes left to spare. They watch some television and then they go to sleep. And so it's important to build in revision into your actual day. Your day is not going to change. You know, your rota is not going to change at hospital. So what you want to do is on your, like, for example, we've got podcasts for the NICE CTS guidelines. You could listen to those podcasts on the way to work whilst you're driving there. That allows you to revise for 15 minutes. On the way back is 15 minutes. Half an hour's revision. Half an hour's revision over 5 days becomes 2.5 hours. Can you see how it builds over time? Similarly, you're having your lunch or your breakfast or your dinner. Do some MCQ questions on our free question bank. Just sit in there, do some questions. You learn something, and of course you can come back to those questions later. So it's all about time managing, and a lot of candidates who fail don't time manage effectively. And then the other thing which we've learned is some candidates find group learning very, very useful. So once a week, you sit down or do a Zoom session with some close colleagues of yours, and you'll cover hypertension. And you'll talk about it, and somebody will tell you a bit of knowledge that you weren't aware of, and then you could give them some knowledge. And it's an amazing way of learning. And of course, it's something that does need coordinating, but we found this is highly effective. And of course, a webinar is a type of group learning because you've got different members, different doctors, and on the webinar who may chip in with different comments. So the key thing is you will pass this exam. For those of you who have failed, we've had lots of trainees in similar situations to yourself who've come to us, and they're very upset, they're very gloomy, they feel like they're never going to pass, they've done something majorly wrong, but they always go on to pass, whether it's the second sitting or possibly even the third sitting. And what we want to highlight is that we are here to help. So if you want to reach out to us, email support, WhatsApp support, you want to book into the mocks, you want to utilize the free question banks, that's everything that's there for you guys so that you can pass in your next sitting. So just to summarize, it is a bit like a computer game. Lots of you would have played computer games. It's about going through the different levels and being able to navigate different stages in your career. And this is just a stage, and you will get through it. So if you have failed, take some time out and just reflect. It'll allow you just to calm down, have an overview of things, get some insight into the process of what's happened, and to come back even stronger. Number two, you then want to plan. You want to plan how you're going to adapt and change, because don't do the thing that you did which led to you failing. Do the thing that's going to help you pass, which hopefully will provided you with lots of insights and tips. Step three is to actually action the plan that you have in place. So what this means is obviously doing the practice questions, doing the mocks, visiting the correct resources, actively learning, not passively learning, collaborating with colleagues, and then on the day itself, of course, you can then go ahead, sit the exam, and hopefully you'll be a pass. And what we've learned is candidates who come to us often pass with very, very good marks when they've borderline failed on previous occasions. And so this would be an overriding strategy you should have in place. And this is a good plan to have in the back of your head going forwards. So what we're going to do is, because we've got another webinar straight after this, which is for the RCA exam, is whether or not any of you have any questions for us, which you can type into the Q&A chat box whilst I just show you a couple more resources. Whilst I show you a couple more resources that you can access on the website. So of course you've got the free question bank. What Dr. Sandhu is going to do is very briefly to show you around the free question bank once I get you some links for the statistics books into your chat box. So I'm just going to hand this over to Dr. Sandhu for a moment to do a screen share.
Sounds good. Can you just enable the... Perfect. Good. So let's get rid of this.
So those two links for the Amazon now are for the statistics books that I mentioned, and they'll be coming up in your chat box soon.
Yeah, so obviously, I mean, I'm sure many of you, if not, I'm sorry, I'm sure many of you have used the AKT question bank to go up to GP exams and get onto the 3003. We're adding more questions to it actually, so you will see that the count number is going up, and we're also reviewing them because the NICE guidance has changed. But ignore all that. But essentially, I mean, it's, you know, you can do the free package. If you want to do the gold stuff, that's got benefits because you get 750 NICE CKS podcasts, which we've just updated in the last week, and you get 750 teaching videos as well, which again are good for visual learners. So it's worth having a look at that. So that's obviously on this part. There are other things though that are on the website that I think we've mentioned this before, but head over to, obviously you've got your monthly webinars and we send you the emails for that. But have a read of some of the articles as well, you know, clinical trials and things that are relevant to the stats thing that we've made easy for you guys to understand for your revision and for your day-to-day clinical practice. And these are just blog articles and they're easy to digest, easy to understand, because we know, you know, how difficult it can be when you're revising. You want to try and get all the relevant stuff. Let me just put my power on before my laptop turns off. So that you can find when you scroll up to the top of the page. You go to blog, and you'll find it in the doctor's blog. And you can also get patient info leaflets, which are probably more relevant for those preparing for the RCA exam. Obviously, the social media pages as well. So the Instagram, the Facebook revision group, Twitter, and our YouTube revision videos as well are things that you will find very useful for your revision as you obviously start to prepare for your next attempt.
And a couple of things. I've included all the links now in the chat box for you guys to access that. The statistics books, the free question banks that we have, and then Dr. Sandy will put in the AKT mock as well. Don't forget for the gold package, which contains 750 podcasts and 750 teaching videos. It's don't pass, don't pay. So what that means is if you don't pass the AKT exam using that package, we'll refund you the money minus, I think there's a small like admin fee that we take off. Is something like £10, I think, roughly. But everything else we refund. So really there's like an amazing value in that. So you got 3,750 MCQ questions, of which 750 are video questions. You get 750 mini videos, which are like mini lectures, and then also you get 750 nice CKS podcasts. And the podcasts are up to date as of February 2021. And then finally, you also get some flashcards, free flashcards sent out to your home address with free postage and packaging. So we highly recommend that you check that out. And then Dr. Sandu would have put in the AKT mock link for you guys to access. And of course, you can reach out to us at any point in time. So I'm just going to bounce out from this because I think we've got a couple of questions.
Yeah, so Dr. Moses, I'm conscious of time because I know we've got another webinar coming up, so I'm going to try and wrap this up quickly. So Mohammed's got a question. I want to increase my knowledge. I've just had the MSRA and waiting for the results. Don't overdo it. So if you're waiting for the results, and that's obviously for GP entrance, I probably wouldn't recommend going straight into AKT. You've got a long time. You're kind of you're planning really far ahead. You don't need to go too far. You've done your revision, wait for your MSRA results, see what you get, and then at least then you can plan forward, obviously, which deanery you end up in. And then once you start GP training, you can then get back onto the question bank. But again, don't start too early. So when you start going into ST1, kind of halfway through, you should start thinking about when you're going to sit the AKT and then start to plan your revision and obviously use your clinical placement. So you'll do rotations. If you're in the Midlands, for example, you'll do 6 months. If you're other parts of the country, you'll do 4 months jobs. Use those jobs as an opportunity to learn. If you're doing PEDS or ENT or anything like that, just learn, absorb as much information as you can. Go to clinic when you can, and then obviously start to do some slow revision in the background, but don't start too early. Yeah, I know, Mohammed, you're very enthusiastic, and that's why I'm saying you're planning. Planning is very good, but don't be too over enthusiasm. Otherwise, you'll be drained out by the time you start your exam preparation for your actual AKT. And obviously, best of luck with your MSRA results. Hopefully, everything goes well. So okay, so we've got another webinar coming up, so we will wrap up there. So obviously, thanks, Dr. Mo, for the tips there. We are open to provide you any support if you do feel like you're struggling or you just want to ask us some questions if something pops up. Drop us an email at info@i-medics.co.uk, which has just been added to the chat box. It might be motivational. It might not just be the fact that you've got clinical stuff, because you can work on that. If you just need a pep talk, get in touch with us. We've done it before. We've done it for people who used to sit the CSA exams. It was not uncommon for people to ring us and be in a right stress in their hotel room in London, and it was just a quick pep talk with one of us, and we'd just reassure them, and we're here to help you pass, and that's the reason why we've got all these resources. Use the mock exam if you are preparing for October, then obviously it's quite realistic, and it will give you a good feel because you'll do it by yourself in the morning, so it's 3 hours and 10 minutes, and then you'll do a good 6 hours of teaching with me and Dr. Moen. We go through hundreds of different nice guidelines, so that will be another useful thing. And the main thing is don't give up, because lots of people have been in the position that you're in today, which is that they didn't pass on the first or even second attempt, but they do get there, and the stats are in your favor. If they weren't, we'd say, well, there's no point, guys, you might as well give up. But the evidence shows that the majority of people will go on and pass the exam, and you guys will not be an exception to that. You will go and pass the exam. It's just a matter of time, and you just need to get your mindset. And yeah, Dr. Mo's got the stats, and there's a 99% will pass by the 4th sitting. Now, hopefully you won't get to that, but you know, just use the time now. So some of you mentioned October, which is great because you've got a good few months. And actually the top tip, and I think he's mentioned it already, is take a little bit of time off. So don't go, which is what we were saying to Mohammed earlier on, don't go straight into another exam. You need to mentally step back, take a few days off, and then go back into the next, you know, your next revision program, and obviously plan, but give yourself a little bit of time to unwind. And then obviously you can go and pace yourself in the run up to the next sitting. Anything else you want to add, Dr. Mo, before we wrap up? Because we have got.
Well, I think that's everything, guys. We've got another webinar after this, so thank you for joining us today. Best of luck with the next sitting. Do reach out to us. We'll hopefully see you at the AKT Big Mock, and we'll see the next. See you in the next webinar if you're joining us there. If not, we'll probably see you at the next teaching webinar. So it's so we'll wrap up then. It's bye-bye from myself, Dr. Mo here at Inspire Medics, and from Dr. Sandhu as well.